Welcome to Get Your Bell Rung Pro Wrestling Podcast. The guest I have on, I'm so excited to talk to her. Her father is an iconic professional wrestler, probably one of the most famous guys to ever put on a pair of boots. Of course, we'll talk about Sgt Slaughter, a name that's recognized even if you weren't a WWE fan, even if you wasn't a wrestling fan, you knew who Sgt Slaughter was. Kelly Slaughter has joined me. Thank you for coming on the show, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So I want to start with your childhood. What was it like growing up with a father that, not only was he a professional wrestler, but as I said, he was so well known all over the world, really.
So, when I was a little girl, I didn't know that my dad was famous. And then when I found out that my dad was famous, um, I didn't really like know any different, right? Because he'd been famous my whole life. So I didn't, there wasn't like this big change. It's not like he went from being not famous to being famous in my lifetime. So I didn't have that experience with it, but like I said, I didn't know anything different. So it was obviously awesome. There was lots of perks and things that I got to do outside the norm that my friends didn't get to do, or other people that I knew didn't get to do. So that was, always fun. But he was just my dad, and wrestling was what he did for a living.
How were you treated at school? Did you feel like, looking back now, do you feel like that, yeah, maybe I was treated a little differently because of who my father was?
So I was very proud of who my dad was. And when we lived in Charlotte when I was a little girl, everyone thought it was awesome. Charlotte was a big wrestling territory, and so people were really accepting of it. And then when we moved to Connecticut, surprisingly, people kind of looked down their noses at it because it wasn't like white collar, and Connecticut's very white collar. Surprisingly so, because WWE is based in Connecticut.
Right.
Um, but yeah, people just kind of didn't look at it the same as they did in Charlotte. And so the kids my age really didn't care. At least they didn't act like they did to me. Um, they would make fun of me for who my dad was. I was also overweight, so they would make fun of me for that. Um, but don't get me wrong, I gave it right back to them. Like I didn't just sit there and take it. And so I did definitely give it back to them. When he was an Iraqi sympathizer, though, that's when shit really hit the fan
Yeah.
for me at school. And my sister's 4 years older than me, so she didn't get it as bad as I did. But I was in the sixth grade. It's already an awkward time of life in adolescence and going through puberty and all of those fun things. And so I got it pretty hard in school, and I was called a traitor and
Wow.
told that my dad was going to jail and all sorts of stuff. It was not a fun experience for me at all.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that. At what point, or was there a point that you're like, this wrestling thing sucks because I want my dad home more than he's able to be home? Did you ever go through that? Or is that something you just always accepted because it was your norm?
It was our norm, so we just accepted it. And even if we didn't like it, we didn't have a choice. So we had to accept it. And it did suck because my dad was gone 300 days of the year. He missed a lot of birthdays and holidays, and Mother's Day for my mom, and Father's Days and father-daughter dances and events and things that my sister and I would have. And so there was lots of really important life events that
Mhm.
my dad missed because of wrestling. So that part of it, wasn't that great. But when he did come home, he would bring us presents, and it was like such an exciting time because dad was home. It was like a holiday. We'd have this, my mother would make a beautiful meal. So it was a celebration when my dad would come home. But it's kind of funny because then that's what we would expect. Every time
Right,
dad came home was presents and this big celebration and a huge meal, and it's like a holiday and that kind of thing. But
right. I'm gonna get back to your dad here in a moment, but I want to talk about you for a second. Throughout school, especially once you get to high school, career wise, uh, did did you have a certain goal, a career that you wanted to get into after school? Were you kind of lost, not one of those kids that know what you wanted to do? Tell me about yourself and how did you do in school and what did you do when you graduated from school?
so I wanted to be a wrestler when I was a little girl. And my parents did not encourage me to do so. My mom didn't want my dad to wrestle, so she certainly didn't want me to do it. And my dad didn't want the wrestling life for me. So he lived it, he didn't want it for me. So definitely was not encouraged. Also, what I saw with women in wrestling at the time, it was not what I wanted to do. I felt like there was, I mean, I was just a little girl, but looking back on it now, there was so much talent in the women in wrestling back then, but they weren't taken seriously. It was
Oh,
campy, glow, the farmer's daughter with the pigtails. And, it was very, I mean, wrestling, it's kind of gotten away from it a little bit, but it was very much glorifying sex and
right.
women's bodies and things like that. But that's what men like, right? That's what they like to look at. Um, but that's not what I liked. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to be taken seriously as a wrestler. So I was like, the men are taken seriously in wrestling. So I want to wrestle the men. So if I had been a wrestler, I would have been China before it was like way before China. No one was wrestling the men. It was they were arm candy or they wrestled other women.
Right.
And so I kind of let go of that dream. And then I wanted to be a veterinarian. I took Latin in school. We had to pick a language that we were going to learn, and I chose Latin because I was going to be a doctor, and I thought that that would help me. It was not a good choice. I would have much rather know how to speak Spanish or French or, something that I could actually put to use. But outside of school, when I got out of school, I went to trade school and I am a massage therapist, retired massage
Okay.
therapist. I'm an esthetician. But right now, I am a fitness coordinator at my local YMCA.
Awesome. Now, I have to ask you about dating because I can tell you, and I'm a pretty big guy. I, play football, well built, and if I would have came across Sergeant Slaughter's daughter, I'd have been scared to death to ask you or any of your, a female that was his daughter out on dates. I mean, he was very intimidating. Did you deal with a whole lot of that?
Yes. But I think friend wise, my friends realized very quickly that my dad was a big teddy bear and that my sister and I had him wrapped around our finger. And the boys, though, they were definitely intimidated and scared of my dad for
Yeah.
sure.
Now, did your dad ever meet any of guys that you were interested in and kind of him put on a show to intimidate them? Because I can tell you, I have an 18-year-old daughter, and she hasn't been in a serious relationship. I've not met any guys, but the first time that happens, I can tell you, all 6'5" of myself, I'm going to make sure. Did that ever happen with any of the guys that your dad met?
Um, uh, I mean, he definitely had the talk with a couple of them. Um, uh, and he did tell there was one boyfriend of mine that he did not like at all. And he there was something in the back of the trunk and my dad was driving us somewhere and it kept like rolling around in the back of the trunk and my boyfriend at the time could hear it. And he was like, "What's in the back of the trunk?" And my dad was like, "Kelly's ex-boyfriend."
That's awesome. That is something that I would expect coming from a character like your father. Now I noticed you carry your dad's, character last name. I'm not going to say what your real last name is. Not looking for that. Why did you take on the Slaughter last name?
Well, if my dad had used his real last name, I would have just stayed with my real last name. But because it was Sergeant Slaughter, I felt like I needed to take that on so that people would know whose daughter I was, just for name recognition.
Now, have you legally changed that to your last name?
No,
Nope. Any plans
no,
to?
no. It would
No.
just be a professional name, yeah.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So going back to your father, with him traveling all the time, did you ever go on a road with him?
We never went on the road with my dad. He had such a hectic schedule. And so we really didn't go on the road with him. I'm sorry, my kids are at my door.
Fine. I get it.
Can
Trust
you
me.
hold on one
Yeah,
moment? I am
absolutely.
so
No,
sorry.
I'm a father.
Bear
I
with
get
me
it.
here.
Yep.
Okay.
So, for those of you who may have just joined in, I am speaking to Kelly Slaughter, who is the daughter of the iconic Sergeant Slaughter. We've been discussing her life a little bit. We're going to get back into talking about her dad. But just let you guys know, if you guys want to comment and possibly ask questions, do so from YouTube. Go to my YouTube channel. For whatever reason, Facebook won't send me the questions that you guys ask from there. So make sure you go to YouTube if you have any questions. Is everything okay?
Yes,
Yep.
my
Do you have,
daughter, it's way past her bedtime and she was in bed. She's not in bed anymore, but it's okay.
got it, got it.
We're
How old
good.
is your daughter?
She is 6,
Six. What age?
6.5. She's going into first grade, and my son is 13, so he's kind of in charge.
Right.
And she is giving him a hard time.
Right. Yep. I completely get it. So you guys really didn't travel a whole lot with your father, you said?
No, we really didn't travel a whole lot with him. We went to a couple shows here and there with him. But it we saw him wrestle the Iron Sheik, and it was very traumatizing for us. I don't know if anyone has watched the documentary, but we talk about it a lot in the documentary on A&E, the biography. Um, and it was a little traumatizing. There was some blood involved, and we really thought we were going to watch our dad be unalived. And so after that, and we were young too.
Mhm.
Um, not smart to the business either. And although my dad would tell us that, oh, we're just dancing and, things like that, and he wasn't getting hurt, we knew he was because he would come home hurt.
Right.
Um, yeah, so it was traumatizing. My mom was like, absolutely not. I am not taking the girls to see you wrestle again. So we really didn't see him wrestle a whole lot. We would do more charity events with him and
Mhm.
go to hospitals and things with him. But it was just too traumatizing for us as little girls. And it wasn't until the Iraqi sympathizer days that my dad smartened me up to the business. I don't know
Mhm.
when he smartened my sister up to the business, but it was during the right before the Iraqi sympathizer days.
Yeah.
Back then, it was a lot different than it is now, where you protected the gimmick, you
Mhm.
protected the business. It was very, you know, kayfabe was a real thing. Like, you didn't break character. Um, so it was a different time in wrestling than
Right.
it is
And
now. And
that's go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't know if anyone watched Young Rock's
Mhm.
show that he had, but I only saw the first season. But he talks about that a lot and how it was like you
Right.
protected the business, you protected the gimmick, like you protect it at all costs. You lie, about people ask me, is your dad in the military? Mm-hmm. Yep, sure is.
Right.
you know.
Well, and that's what I was going to go to. Do you remember there ever being a time doing your dad's heel run that you're with your dad, you're hanging out, and he comes across fans or whatnot that he had to turn that, the bad Sergeant Slaughter on? And if so, how did you deal with that?
He never did it in front of us. So, anytime that if there was a negative fan that came up, I didn't know that it was happening.
Right.
I wasn't aware that they were being mean about it, or they didn't do it because they saw that he was with his kids.
Hmm.
Um, but if it were to have happened, my dad would have just walked away because we were with him.
Right.
Now, what he did when we weren't around, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't say.
Well,
But when
uh,
we were around, yeah, I
it-
I can't think of a time. Now, people would say stuff to me.
right.
I actually babysat someone and the father was taking me home and he obviously did not know who my dad was. Um, I don't even know if the mom knew.
Hmm.
Everybody in town knew. It was a small town, so she had to have known, but the dad did not know. And he was driving me home and he said I was directing him on how to take me home and I told him what road we lived on and it was an unmarked gravel road. And he said, "Oh, I heard that Sergeant Slaughter lives on this road. Is he your neighbor?" And I said, "Yes, he's my neighbor. He does live on this road, and yeah, he's my neighbor." Or he asked me, and I said, "Oh yeah, he's my neighbor," or something like that. But I alluded to the fact that he was not my dad; he was a
Right.
neighbor.
Wow.
And he proceeded the entire drive down our road and up our driveway to talk some major shit about my dad and Sergeant Slaughter and all this stuff. And when he parked the car and I got out, I said, "Well, thank you for the ride. Sergeant Slaughter's my dad. Have a good night." Slammed the door and went inside. And they never asked me to babysit again.
That's, oh, that's actually an awesome story. So your dad got involved with the whole GI Joe thing. Uh, do you remember how that came about and his time with the GI Joe?
I do. That was a lot of fun because now it's a cartoon and comic books and things like that, and it wasn't fighting and wrestling, and he wasn't getting hurt. It was a cartoon and it was voiceovers, so he was home a lot more. Um, I remember him having the GI Joe. Like I remember having it and taking it to school for show and tell and telling all the kids that that was my dad, like holding it up and being like, "This is my dad." And they did not care. They was like crickets. They could not care less.
What kind of things did you guys do whenever he was home off the road together?
Spend time together. He would make his slaughter steaks for us. We would spend time with friends. We would go out of town. We're originally from Minnesota. So we would go back to Minnesota and visit family for holidays. And we had a cabin in Wisconsin on a lake. So we would go to Wisconsin every year, and the whole family would come, extended relatives or the extended family. And it'd be a lot of fun tubing and things like that on the lake. And um, just a lot of time with family would be
Right,
spent
right.
when
Do you
my dad
also
was home.
do
It was
y'all
family was very and is very important to my dad.
now? Do you all have family still in Minnesota?
Yes, we do still have family, although it's kind of dwindling away as they all pass away, unfortunately. But
Right.
yeah, we still have family. Yeah, so I hadn't been back for a while, and then my grandmother passed away a couple years ago, and so I was back for that. But that's kind of how, as I've gotten older, it's kind of I don't see my cousins unless it's a funeral or a wedding. So we've been talking about we need to do a cousins trip.
Right, right. My condolences about your grandmother. I know how much people cherish their grandmothers. Mine passed away a couple of years ago as well, and that's really hard. Ben NG said that he met Sarge and brought up his Iraq gimmick. He was apologetic about it. I thought it was a cool run, and we'll actually get more into that, Ben, here in a moment or so. I know you said that your mom didn't really want you watching your father wrestle because of how upsetting it was. Did you ever sneak and watch him while he was on TV in a match?
Yes, and I would catch wrestling on TV sometimes, and I'd be sitting there watching and waiting for my dad to come on. And sometimes he would walk by and peek his head in and be like, "What are you watching?" And I tell him, he's like, "Well, I'm not on that show." He's like, "Turn it off." So I would turn it off. But yeah, we would watch when we got older, we would watch stuff. Like more when he was like the commissioner.
Hmm.
When we were a little bit older, we would watch that. It was hard to watch my dad wrestle.
Right, right. Yeah, I
So we
mean,
didn't watch it a whole lot.
right. I mean, he was a very, very physical guy. I mean, his matches were a lot more physical compared to even a lot of other matches with other wrestlers. Tell me about your father as a human being, because all of us fans know him as the guy that is screaming maggot on TV, very loud, very boisterous. Um, how was this character different from your father?
Completely different. My dad is quiet, and like I said before, he's like a big teddy bear, and everyone loves my dad. He's a really good storyteller. He has some very great stories also. But he is a good man and a good human being, and he's a great dad. And he would do anything for his family and his grandchildren. And yeah, he whistles really well. He's a really good whistler.
Now you mentioned some earlier his Sergeant Slaughter steaks. I think you said. What is a Sergeant Slaughter steak?
You cut out a little bit, so I didn't get to hear
Oh,
what you
I'm
said.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, when you were talking about your father being home off the road, that he would cook a lot, and you said he would cook his Sergeant Slaughter steaks. What is his Sergeant Slaughter steaks? I must know.
Well, I can't tell you the recipe or I'd have to kill you. But it is a marinated teriyaki steak. It is a teriyaki base that my dad doctors up with different ingredients. Um, and then it's like the way he cooks the steak that also makes it so good. And like how
Got
he
it.
finishes it and
Right.
all of that. But that is
Right.
slaughter steak and it's delicious.
Got it. So your dad was considered this American hero. He was a baby face for so long. And then all of a sudden they want to turn him heel. But before that happens, wasn't he home off the road for a good bit before this took place? Walk me through how this all came about.
So he had been working for the WWE. He had this idea with Hasbro, had talked to Hasbro, had this whole idea about the G.I. Joe thing. And Hasbro was all gung ho. So he brought it to Vince, and Vince was all about it too. He's like, "Yeah, that's great. That's great, Sarge." He said, "There's only one problem. I just signed a contract yesterday with a different toy company, so you can't do it." So my dad was like, "The hell you say? I'm doing it." So he did it and he left the WWE and he did the whole G.I. Joe Hasbro thing, which was the correct decision for him.
Right. Absolutely.
Um, and when the contract was over with G.I. Joe, he had been wrestling also with, the whole G.I. Joe thing too, with on the independents. Um, and so when that kind of was like over with the contract with Hasbro and all of that, he was home a lot more. Well, he was home a lot more anyway because he wasn't wrestling as much with that he was with WWE. But then when the contract with G.I. Joe ended, he was definitely home a lot more. And then one day he got the call from Vince saying, "Hey, Sarge, I got this idea. What if you come back and it's going to be like this whole like Iraqi thing. They were just kind of like throwing things out. And he's like, yeah, that's great. But how'd you get Hogan to agree to be the heel? He was like, I'm not talking about Hogan. I'm talking about you.
Wow.
You're going to be the heel. You're turning against America. So he talked to my mom about it, and my mom did not want him to do it, and he did it anyway. And so, yeah, he had to have a talk with us. Like I said, that's when he
Right.
smartened us up to the business.
Right.
Um, because he knew that there was going to be a lot of heat. I don't think
Right.
they realized how much heat there was going to be,
Right.
but there was a lot of heat.
Yeah. Now, how old were you at this point? When he turned
Say
heel,
that again.
how old were you when he turned heel and turned his back?
So I was in the sixth grade, so
Okay.
like 12, 13, something like that.
Okay. Now, how quickly did this started having a psychological effect on your whole family? Once he did turn heel, was this something that happened right away? Was it a slow burn for it to build up what it did?
I don't really remember how long it took before the death threat started, but it was pretty fast after the heel turn happened. It I mean, it was an awful time period in our family. Like my mom didn't want him doing it, so there was a lot of resentment there between my parents. So, then or between my mom to my
Right,
dad, and then my dad also is like, I'm doing this for us and for our family, and look at how much money I'm making, and all of that. And he was doing it to sell out. Oh gosh, I can't remember the stadium now, but he was doing it
Madison
to
Square
sell it
Garden.
out, and it didn't go that way because then they had to change venues and all of that stuff. And so in the end, he did it for nothing because what he thought was going to happen and what Vince and them had talked about, it didn't end up going that way.
Right.
So,
Talk.
well, I don't want to say he did it for nothing
Right.
because
Right.
it was, in my
Right.
opinion, the biggest heel turn in wrestling history.
I could look. I cannot tell you how much I agree with that. There's this big debate that had been happening within pro wrestling about what is the biggest, you know, heel turn in professional wrestling, and most people said Hulk Hogan. A lot of people talk about John Cena. And I'm with you. I think that it was actually Sgt Slaughter because of the fact that the danger that your whole family was in. Talk to me about what it did to you personally.
Well, um, we had security, 24-hour security. We had people following us everywhere we went to make sure that we were safe, and that was all, provided to us by Vince. Um, you know, Emotionally, like mentally, it was very hard for me because I got it so bad in school and they were relentless, and it was like this one group of boys and relentless. Um, And like I said, I gave it right back to them, but that doesn't mean I was having a good time.
Right,
You know what I mean? Like I'm fighting all the time in school verbally with these kids and getting in people's faces and, almost coming to blows. And um, it wasn't fun. And then I would try to talk to my dad about it, and my dad's laughing. And
wow,
I'm like, I don't think this is funny. I am being terrorized in school. Like, you want triangle of terror? I'm being terrorized in school. Um, so no, it was awful for me. Also because my dad did a lot of stuff for the school and it was a small town and everybody in school knew my dad. They'd met my dad. They knew my dad as Kelly's dad, as
mhm,
Bob, or Mr. Remus. And so for them to then turn on my dad and turn on me was kind of like, but this is my dad. This is the same person that he was yesterday, and you loved him yesterday. So why are you acting like this now. And my dad ended up having to like come to the school and have like a talk
Wow.
with everyone, like a big assembly. And it did not help, but he had to go to come and do that. I mean, um, so it
Yeah.
was a very hard time in my life. And it
That,
also having I don't know if it was that part of his career or just his career in general and growing up that way, it made me very closed off to other people and very private. And my close group of friends know me, they know the real me, they know my dad and my family, and they know my personal stuff, but everybody else, they're at an arm's distance.
right. Now,
I just had to do that. People wanted to be my friend just because of who my dad was, and
right, right. You
so
you spoke about talking to your dad about all this and him laughing about it, and obviously, I've read a lot about your dad. I've watched a lot of stuff about your dad. His family, his kids was everything to him. Do you think part of that laughing was because that he was a little bit out of touch as far as how much hatred was out there for him due to this heel turn and him being an Iraqi sympathizer?
no, I actually, because that's what my dad did for a living. And so talking shit was like what they did to each other and razzing each other. So my dad's like, oh, yeah, that was a good one. Like, whatever those kids said to me, like, oh, haha, like, that's funny. And I'm like, it's not funny, Dad. Like, but like in the wrestling world, like, that is funny because
Right,
that's how they made their money, with the promos that they were doing and everything. And so no, I don't think it was that he was so out of touch. He knew how much heat there was, and he knew how bad we had it and how bad I had it. Because again, my sister was 4 years older, and the kids in school weren't treating her the way they were treating me.
right, right. You talked about your mom having that resentment to your dad for actually doing this. Was there any resentment, even if you didn't show it? Did you feel any resentment towards your dad for you having to go through this type of shit?
I was resentful that he would not give me comebacks to say to the kids that were being mean to me. Because I'm like, that's what I wanted from him, was to give me things to say to totally annihilate these kids. And he wouldn't. And as a mom, now I understand why, because my son has experienced a little bit of bullying in school, and I want to tell him things that he can say back, but I'm like, I can't. Like, I can't do that. I'm giving him ammunition against another kid. You know what
Right,
I mean? So you just have to tell them, be the bigger person. Like my dad would say, tell them we're laughing all the way to the bank, you
right,
know?
right. Now,
So
Ben
that was
brought
my
up,
dad's comeback, was we're laughing all the way to the bank. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
right,
I was in sixth grade, I'm like, okay,
right,
I
right.
don't know what that means.
Can you vouch if this is true or not? Ben said that he heard that he was initially going to set the American flag ablaze instead of Hulk Hogan's shirt. Do you remember if that was something that was supposed to happen?
They wanted my dad to burn the American flag. And
Oh,
I think, was it me, Jean, may have said on air one time that he thought my dad was going to be backstage burning the flag or something about it. My dad was like, absolutely not. Don't ever say that again. I will not burn the American flag. That is too far, but I will burn. What if I burn a Hulkamania shirt?
right, right,
So that was my dad's compromise, but
right.
he refused to burn the American flag.
Yeah. So at the height of this, do you recall what any instances that will always stick out in your mind from fans retaliating against either your father or towards your family?
Um, I mean, my dad was stabbed. Um, the death threats against not only my dad, but against my dad's family, against us and his daughters. They knew where we lived, they knew our names, they knew what schools we went to. Which back then was unheard of. We were unlisted. There was no
Right,
Google. You couldn't
right,
Google anything. Our address was paid. We paid to be unlisted, so you couldn't look us up. Um, so that was, a little scary. Yeah, other than that, like I can't really think of anyone instances that I witnessed fans retaliating. Um, what I witnessed was my sister actually went to a wrestling match in Boston when my dad was a Iraqi sympathizer, and what
Wow.
she saw, she was like, "I'll never go to a match again because why do people hate my dad so much?" You know what I mean? Like they were
Right.
throwing things at him and calling him every name in the book. And, you know, again, we didn't watch, so we didn't really get it. And we were like, that's just our dad. Like, you guys are idiots. Like, he's playing a character. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't, that's our dad, you know? But it really wasn't until maybe about 15 years ago now. I was sitting watching some YouTube promos of my dad during that time frame with my dad. My dad and I were sitting there watching him together, and I started to get mad and like fuming, like flames, heart pounding. Like I wanted to go through the computer and kill this man on TV because of what he was saying about America and Americans and all this stuff. And I turned to my dad and I was like, Dad, no wonder you had death threats. Like, I want to kill you right now. And I'm your daughter and you're my dad. And like, I know that you didn't mean anything that you were saying, but like, that's how good he was at what he did. So it's like, now I get it. Like, I get why we had the death threats. Like, I get why people were so mad. My dad was so good at what he did. He had death threats.
Right. Right. Yeah, and the fans back then were very different from the fans today. And don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of fans out there that I constantly say that they are cancer to to the business. Fans back then would actually get physical. I mean, I've heard stories of urine being thrown, batteries. Your father was stabbed. Vehicles being vandalized. Uh, so did I know you said that your mom had resentment towards your dad. Did it stop just at that resentment, or did this heel turn actually start to really affect the relationship between your mom and dad?
Well, they got divorced
Mhm.
not long after that. So it definitely affected their marriage and their relationship. And so yeah, yeah,
Now, have you ever met Vince McMahon?
I have a few times.
Um, did you want to kind of say, "What the hell were you thinking of when you made decided to do this?"
I would never say that to Vince McMahon.
Right, right. Out of respect, out of fear,
Both.
both. Now, when was it a sigh of relief whenever you found out that okay, this crazy heel, not just a heel run, but this crazy storyline of my dad turning his back on America? Because after all, he's Mr. GI Joe. He is a sergeant in the military. He loved his country. He was the hero of professional wrestling, and then he turns his back on his fans and the United States. Was there a sigh of relief whenever you knew that this was coming to an end?
Yes. Absolutely. It was like, thank God. You mean I don't have to get this in school anymore? Like, I don't have to deal with this crap from these kids. Like, these people can leave our yard and like not be following us around anymore. This is amazing. Thank God.
Right. So I want to talk about his years as the commissioner of WWE storyline. He had a big conflict with DX. Uh, Although you knew the business then, you know that things were basically scripted. Did it still bother you to see people like Triple H and Shawn Michaels making fun of your father the way they did, or was it just, this is just wrestling?
It was hilarious. Like, I loved it. it was funny. You know what I mean? And like they were also very respectful about it. Like they would talk to my dad first about some things. They were like, "Hey Sarge, can we say this about your mom?" And he's like, "Well, my mom's dead." And they're like, "Okay, well, can we say this about your wife?" And he's like, "Well, I don't have a wife." He's like, "Okay, well, we'll just say your old lady," like stuff
Right.
like that. And so they definitely, held my dad to the legend status that he is, and were very respectful to him and how they were going to do everything. And um, but that famous promo or whatever it's called, where they were their exchange, where they were in the ring and they got out that mask with
Yeah.
the windshield wiper.
Hmm.
Hilarious, by the way, because my dad spits when he talks because of the way his jaw is set.
Uh,
And when he gets really upset and angry and like yelling, like spit flies. And he knows that. He can't help it. And so he didn't know what they had in the bag, but he knew there was something in there, but he didn't know what was in there. So when they took those out and he saw what they were doing, he was like, all right. So he just held back and held back and held back, and he waited until they took them off before he started yelling and spitting all over them. So he got his revenge.
right.
But it's like stuff like that. That's what I mean. Like they're making fun of my dad for
Mhm.
how he spits when he talks, and he's taking it, with,
Right.
a great of salt. He likes it. He thinks it's funny, but he's like, but now I'm going to get you back. And this is
Right.
how I'm going to get you back. You want to make fun of me spitting? I'm going to spit all over you.
To go back for a second, with him going from heel back to baby face, was the threats that you guys were getting, BNT, stuff like that, did that go away instantaneously, or was there still some lagging issues?
The fans were very forgiving. Wrestling
Mm,
fans are very forgiving, kind of like soap opera fans.
yep.
We are soap opera fans are very forgiving of those characters too. Yeah, they were very forgiving, but every now and then people will still bring it up and like call him a traitor. And I'm like, wait, are you serious? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, bye.
That's crazy.
See you
That is crazy.
later, dude.
Do you have any Sergeant Slaughter stories, either from stories that he's told you, or you know your own story that you could share with everyone?
Can you say the first part
Sure,
again? I just
sure.
heard story that you can share.
Yep, yep. I apologize. Do you have any Sergeant Slaughter stories that you could share, either that from your dad telling you, or your own personal Sergeant Slaughter story?
Um, like about what? Like a story, like what kind of Sergeant Slaughter story?
Just whatever. Your favorite story
Okay,
about your father.
here's a funny story. Okay. So it's about him, but also about me. All right. So I was hanging out with some friends. I was about 19, 20, something around there. Hang out with some friends. I would say maybe there were like 10 people all hanging out in this apartment, having a good time. Half of them knew who my dad was, the other half had no idea. So wrestling comes up as it inevitably does. And so some guy that I didn't know said that he knew Sergeant Slaughter. And not only did he know Sergeant Slaughter, he knew Sergeant Slaughter's son. And that him and his mom and Sergeant Slaughter's wife were best friends. And I'm like, oh, really? And how do you know Mr. Sergeant Slaughter? And my friends are going, dude. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I want to know how he knows Sergeant Slaughter. And I really want to know about Sergeant Slaughter's son. Is he single? Like, what's he look like? How old is he? Like, asking all these questions. I do not have a brother, by the way.
Yeah.
Um, And so he's literally digging a hole, right? Keeps talking about Sergeant Slaughter, and Sergeant Slaughter's his neighbor, lives right next to him with his wife and kids. And I'm like, oh, really? What street? I can I drive by there? Like I would love. So finally, and I just kept asking, and my friends are like this now. They're like, oh my God, just stop talking. Stop talking. So finally I went, well, I can't remember the guy's name. John. John, I find all of this fascinating, but very hard to believe. He's like, no, I swear to God, I'm telling you, I'm being the truth. I'm telling you the truth. All of that's for real. I'm really best friends with Sergeant Slaughter's son. I'm like, well, I don't think that that could possibly be because I'm Sergeant Slaughter's daughter. I've never lived on that street. I have no idea who the hell you are. My mom is definitely not friends with your mom. I don't have a brother. Like, he doesn't have a son. Like, I don't know. And so all of his friends are like, oh, shit, like you just got, and like all this stuff. It was amazing. I loved every moment of it. He not so much. But yeah, that is probably my favorite Sergeant Slaughter story.
That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. One more question for you. Tell me about Sergeant Slaughter, the grandfather.
So he loves his grandchildren. He's a very doting grandfather. Probably making up for the time that he missed with his daughters growing up. But, just like being a dad, he is a big teddy bear, and he loves them and they love him, and they know what he does, or, that he's a famous professional wrestler and a legend, and they don't get it. Kind of like how we were when we were
Mhm.
little, like we didn't get it, and it took us getting a little older for it to really like click in, like, oh, like not everybody's grandpa's like people ask for his autograph and stuff. Like people don't stand in line to meet your grandpa. Like, why not? So
That's awesome. Before I let you go, Joe Helms, the Silverback Joe Helms, very good friend of mine. He's actually a professional wrestler on the indie scene. He actually works from time to time for Mr. Herb Simmons at SICW. He is a massive fan of your father. So there you go, Joe. I brought you up.
well,
Now let
hi
you
Joe. A 10 hut.
there you go, Joe. Yeah, great guy. His interest is one of the best interests on the NDC, and it's absolutely amazing. Kelly, thank you so much for taking your time out to join me. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Tell your father that the guy that he has no idea who he is, Kevin, very, very big fan of his. I appreciate everything he's done for the business. He will always be considered one of the largest iconic professional wrestlers with it.
Thank you.
So you're always welcome to come on. Feel free if you ever have anything you want to promote for your father or whatever. If you want to come on during a weekly recap show, do you keep up with the product today?
Do I keep up with what?
With the product today, with current wrestling?
A little bit. I get some like on my feed on my
Yeah.
professional pages. I'll look at that and stuff. And I love Rhea Ripley. I love
Oh,
her.
she is absolutely awesome. The
Or Rhea
women's,
Ripley, however
yeah,
you say
the women's division is the best it's ever been. They are now starting to have their own
it. Nikki
Kelly.
Bella's back. I
Yeah,
saw that. I saw a clip of that. I was like, yes, I loved the Bellas. I
yeah,
loved them.
yeah. Wrestling is so different now for the women, and good for them because they're in a sense they're doing much better than even the men are right now. They really are. So if you ever want to come on and do a recap of a Monday Night Raw, you're more than welcome to do so. But again, thank you
Thank
so
you.
very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, everybody. You guys have a great rest of your week.